All right, Kingkillers, we're covering chapters 66 through 68 in this episode. Fitz is going to lead us off with some foreshadowing, which leads to the very subtle R. Kelly and Tijuana connection. We discuss Kvothe's heroic feat in the fishery and come up with some theories on who started the fire. Then we try to determine whether albinos exist in this world, how well do thongs measure heat, and Kvothe's hidden love for cargo pants and toeless shoes. Finally, me and Tim drop Fitz's dead weight, dive deeper into Auri, learn the dark fate awaiting the boys, Kvothe, Will, and Sim's boy band, and we infuriate our number one fan, Mickey Rourke. So sit back and enjoy.
All right, welcome back, killers, to the very, very most killer broadcast, Kingkiller Podcast. Tonight, I'm joined by my two girlfriends, Timberly and Danielle. Say hi, girls.
This is my least favorite opening of all time. It's not even close.
That's
terrible.
Yeah, it's pretty emasculating.
Being your girlfriend, just being a girl, okay, but being your girlfriend, ugh.
Yeah, really
gross. I could do way better.
Really slumming.
Way better.
Really slumming around in the gutters here.
You wish.
What the fuck? Oh, Fitz. Wow.
All right. Well, anyway, guys, as always, I am the most magnanimous Fitz. But before we get started with chapter 66 tonight, I'd like to give a little prelude to that chapter. So as you guys probably know, chapter 66, titled Volatile, is about Kvothe in the fire in the fishery. So, as I mentioned last week, I'd like to start off with chapter 61, Jackass, and just point out some of the foreshadowing that Rothfuss gives. When Kvothe is standing at the, he's talking to Willem, getting ready to go in and talk to Master Lauren. That guy, his name is Auri, I believe. He comes out, and shortly thereafter, when Kvothe actually does go in and talk to Master Lauren, he mentions that Master Lauren looks like a doctor. And he mentions that in a Modegan play, this signifies disaster in the next act. And that's what actually got me kind of paying attention to the things that were said from there on and trying to figure out what that disaster actually was. And it ended up being the fire in the fishery. So some of the phraseology that Rothfuss uses in that chapter is open flame, flooded the room, billowing wildly, caught wind, radiating, and standing near a fire. Then later on in the chapter, he's gotten thrown out of the Horse and Four, and he's talking about some of the other hotels that he may try to stay at. I had Dan look up this part of the chapter, and I'm going to have him read this part real quick.
So it was, all right. But the innkeeper at Holly Bush refused to speak with me. The white hair and the queen's crown were content with their current musicians. At the Golden Pony, I waited for over an hour before I realized I was being politely ignored. By the time I was turned away by the Royal Oak, I was fuming. It was Ambrose. I didn't know how he'd done it, but I knew it was him. Bribes, perhaps, or a rumor that an inn employee...
That's good.
Okay.
Okay, so if you guys have ever seen a holly bush, there's two things that I wanted to kind of signify here. The way a holly bush looks in the color, so like red berries, and then the holly looks like a flame itself. Was it white hair or white heart?
White heart.
The white heart, yeah.
Yeah, which to me seemed like white hot. Also, queen's crown. If you think of a queen's crown, it's got the sparkly jewels and kind of the form of flames. The golden pony, that being the the color again. Then he goes on to say he's fuming, which to me, like fumes of a flame or fumes in the fishery. So obviously the next chapter.
One thing I did want to mention though, the golden pony, that has nothing to do with fire. That's kind of like a Tijuana donkey show, except for it's more of a golden shower than than what they do.
Do they have that at the donkey show? I've not seen that. So
yeah, it's in there. It's hidden in the text.
Part.
I'm not gonna pull it out,
well,
but if you dig into it deeply, you can find where it's mentioned that there's a golden shower pony show going at.
I was going to say, and if it's ponies, this sounds like something R. Kelly would be into.
Yes.
Like it's definitely young.
Yeah, it's a wink to R. Kelly for sure.
Nice.
Maybe I'm way off here.
Well, I'm not that familiar with his music, but in the chapter that you're referencing, Fitz, did you find any lyrics from his songs, like any choruses or that you want to link to?
I'll tell you what, man, that's you make a really strong case already, Tim. So maybe I'll go back and look. You guys are probably right. But let's move on to the next chapter because there's still more. Obviously, in the next chapter, Kvothe goes to the fishery for the demonstration about the bone tar, which is kind of the most foreshadow that he can give. He's telling you exactly what's going to happen. So Kvothe mentions before he even goes to that, he says, I'll be doing fine as long as I can keep myself from getting killed in the fishery. So, but there's just a couple things that whole chapter was really the demonstration itself was the foreboding part or the foreshadowing. So that's all I had. I just thought that stuff was interesting and all caught my attention, especially after he started talking about the Modegan plays. So I thought that I would, kind of put it all together and see if you guys might agree.
I mean, yeah, there's mentions of fire and that kind of stuff. I don't know if I would tie all those together that he was trying to. I think the bone tar is Chekhov's gun. Like as soon as he introduced the bone tar, something's going to happen to it. I think that's
no question about it.
Clear giveaway.
I thought for sure that there was a lot to it, but I also realized that I'm kind of a schizo, so maybe I'm dreaming it up, but I'm going to bring it up. There's a little more foreshadowing in a couple chapters, so why don't we just dig into this chapter and see where it goes? Want to?
Yeah.
Okay. So we all know what chapter it is. Chapter 66 is titled Volatile. In this chapter, Kvothe heads into the fishery early in the morning to begin his work on some blue emitters, which require bone tar in order to work. Kvothe notices some frost on his canister, and he alerts an experienced artificer who shrugs it off. After a couple of hours, Kvothe hears someone say, "Oh my God." He then turns to see his canister leaking and then falling over onto the floor and shattering. Kvothe uses sympathy and sygaldry to break a tank of water and drench himself, and then grabs Fela in his cloak, and he rushes out just in time before the fire ignites, or while the fire ignites, and gets her and himself to safety. He wakes up in the Medica alive, and he and Fela have gone out not unscathed, but at least with minor injuries. Sim and Willem come to visit him at the Medica and bring him some fresh clothes. Kvothe quickly goes straight away to the Aeolian, but has just missed Dinah, and Diok tells him that she left with some old dude. Kvothe then heads to Anchors and eavesdrops on the other students, relaying the story of his heroism. He eats lunch, and that's about it. Not a very eventful chapter, guys. You want to go?
Yeah, right. Real quick, the canister is not Kvothe's canister; it's the canister that looks different. There's a one? There is a canister that holds bone tar, and you go up to it and you can put some into your vial, and you have to seal it really quick and blah blah blah. But yeah, the canister looked odd. The canister was frosted. Like if you've ever done nitrous. if you've ever had a big If you've ever had a big nitrous tank, if you ever went to a party where they had a big nitrous tank.
I'm not a hooligan.
And you fill up the balloons, eventually it can frost. And then once starts to frost up, that's what I pictured with this bone tar canister.
Not to be a nerd here, but yeah, it's a pressure thing. If you take the pressure off, pressure and temperature are relative. If you take the pressure off of a canister like that somewhat quickly, or at least over a period of time, it forms frost. I do refrigeration work, so I know that for sure.
Well, the first thing that I find interesting in this chapter is he says, knowing it would be useless to attempt to get back to sleep, I headed to the fishery. So he goes there early in the morning before he normally goes. The reason I think that's interesting is what causes the bone tar to break the glass vial that was holding it and then crack through the container is that it was too cold. The sigildry got damaged that keeps it cold, and then it just kept getting colder and colder until the glass shattered. So I tend to think that there might be someone behind the scenes was trying to get Kvothe out of the way, and that it wasn't damaged on accident. I think that it might have been someone intentionally damaged it. But the problem with that theory is Kvothe doesn't normally go early in the morning.
Yeah.
So how would he know that Kvothe was going to go there unless he's got some type of clairvoyance, or he was thinking like if he damages it, Kvothe's going to go to the fishery, see what happened, miss his dinner, but obviously he wouldn't know Kvothe well enough. Like Kvothe would let everybody burn in the entire university before he'd miss a dinner with lunch with dinner. But I think that someone intentionally did it, but then I think what this throws into question is why they did it. What was their ultimate goal with doing it?
It's also a real long shot that it's going to impact Kvothe specifically.
Yeah.
Right? Because like you said, he's not typically there in the mornings. And even if it happened, even if destroying the sigildry took longer to take effect, and then it took effect later in the day, maybe he's not around, maybe he doesn't go that day. There's so many things that could go haywire where that wouldn't, really take effect. It's definitely suspicious as hell, because it seems like this doesn't just happen, right? Like, at least that I got that impression.
Well, it could be that, hold on. It could be that the guy, whoever damaged it, if someone intentionally damaged it, that he has some type of clairvoyance. So he knew by doing that, the train of events that would happen that would get Kvothe out of the way. Could be that. Or it could just be that Kvothe wasn't part of the plan to begin with. He had some other intention, some other motive. Maybe he wanted to get in the fishery when everybody was out of there. Because like Kvothe, when he goes back, no one's in there. Maybe he was trying to get in. Like, now that I say that, what it could have been is that the other Gaelet, like Devi, the guy that he goes and meets, Kvothe and him are having a conversation together, and they're talking about like, hey, I heard that after the fishery went up, that you went in, or someone went in, and they stole a bunch of stuff, and then they were you were rumored to have been selling it. So now that I say that in my head, maybe he did it. And it was a train of events that fucked Kvothe, but his intention was to get in there and just rob the fishery. And it almost got fella killed, and Kvothe, had to save her, but maybe it was that guy did it.
So wait, so that went down successfully? Someone stole a bunch of stuff from the fishery and was able to sell it?
Yeah.
So it was successful. Whatever little heist they had was successful.
Yeah. Now, it could be that he did it.
That's interesting.
He just took advantage of the situation, but now that I think about that, I don't know why I never put that together, and now that makes me think he's the one that did it.
So, I'm trying to picture how you destroy the sigildry, because I know how Kvothe does it with the drench, but does someone scratch it?
Yeah,
because I'm also picturing
just scratch it. Like that's all he does to get out of, or like when he's in Ambrose's room, he was thinking like all I got to do is scratch it. And then he was like, oh, shit, if I do that, then everybody's going to know that someone who knows sigildry is the one that got out. So you could just scratch it and that would damage it. And also like the ice box that's in anchors.
Yeah, that's what I was
When it stops
thinking,
working, it was just because it got scratched. So just scratching a ruin would damage it. So it could be as simple as that. But it seems like someone intentionally did it.
Yeah, I mean, especially with something that's so volatile, something that's so dangerous, you would think the way the sigildry would be utilized or put into the object itself would be in the safest of ways. You know what I'm saying? Like, so you wouldn't do a sloppy job of it. So that would also say whoever did it. And I kind of the way that I would buy this,
they had to be
the
good.
Theory. Well, yes, but the way that I buy the theory that you're bringing up would be someone that has access to some sort of clairvoyance. So they would also know exactly how to mess with the sigildry and exactly when, and they would know all the specifics, which hints at like a Chandrian sort of individual or something.
Well, if it's the Gaelet, then he just did it because he was like, I'll fuck this up, and then when shit goes to hell in a handbasket, I'll step in when everybody clears out, and I'll steal some shit, and then I'll sell it.
That's a pretty... that's a really knowledgeable Gaelet. Like, very experienced.
Well, I mean, he went to the university. He was knowledgeable. He was,
I don't remember all these things about
as well. Like, so he would be in a position where, like, he would know how to damage sigildry. Especially, he seems to be a knowledgeable and a person who can gain access. He's the one that gets the schema, or he could have got a schema for Kvothe to make a gram, so he has
I remember that.
knowledge on these kind of things. He would be capable of acquiring the knowledge to know what to do, and it could be that he did it. It still could also be, like Rothfuss likes to do. There's multiple different scenarios for how it could be an accident. It could be
Ambrose.
It could be Denna's patron. I would be surprised if it was Ambrose. I don't know what he would have to gain. But
well, if he would be, I think he's candidate number one, not only because he tries to kill Kvothe 2 chapters later, but because he has access to the fishery, or at least someone he knows does, who he can pay to go in there, wait for Kvothe to come, and when Kvothe comes, I'll give you 3 gold eagles to make that shit break and kill him or kill everybody.
Yeah, but the problem with that, it was damaged before he got there.
Well, the thing about the Ambrose theory, I think it's a bit much, but the thing that would make it almost credible to me is that this is one of the things that launches Kvothe to absolute hero status. So, because every time him and Ambrose try to fuck with him, he wins one over big time, right? So, I mean, he saves fella's life. Everybody at the university now knows this dude is a legit hero.
It works out to his advantage for sure.
I also think Ambrose could be behind it. He's not going to do it himself.
I think my top guesses would be that it was Denna's patron for some reason. That Gaelet, I think, is my top suspect now, or it was somebody else that had some kind of nefarious means that we don't really understand exactly what was going on there yet. But I'd be surprised if it was an accident and we don't discover who did it, unless Rothfuss was trying to, when he had that interaction between Kvothe and that guy and they discuss him stealing something from the fishery, unless that was the clue and that's the only answer we're going to get. I would think that we might get an answer in the 3rd book.
What about when Kvothe goes back in after he gets bandaged up and everything? He goes back in and to finish his work, which I thought was crazy anyway. Right, like a couple hours or whatever after it happens, he goes back in to finish his emitters, and nobody's there. In fact, Kilvin's not there. Kilvin comes in like trying to shrug somebody off of him from the Medica. Am I right about that?
That's what I was saying. The motivation was likely to clear out the fishery, and that Galet took advantage of the fishery being cleared out by stealing a bunch of shit and then selling it. Since there was, no other means to get that shit, he jacked up the prices on people, I believe.
I've been suspicious that someone was behind it. Going into this, I didn't have a theory as to who. What you bring up about the Galet is the most sound to me in terms of a theory. But like you said, the way Rothfuss did this, it's very wide open, and it could be a number of different individuals. It's very unlikely, as per usual, that it's left to happenstance, but he leaves that open. He always don't hear about it. Not always, but
yeah. And if we don't hear about it in the third book, then I'll be convinced it was the Galet, and that conversation was our clue. Because if there's no other explanation, that's the only one I can come up with. That's the clearest example of an explanation. I just, for whatever reason, it wasn't clicking in my head until just this moment. But I think if it's not mentioned in the third book, it had to have been him.
Well, so since we're talking about it anyway, one of the things that did sort of jump out on me from the first read was, and putting myself in remembering the first read, I remember it jumped out at me that he didn't alert Kvothe. I thought Kvothe should have. Instead of just asking someone walking by and saying, hey, is this normal? And then just going with like Jackson just made a joke, sort of. Like, he was very flippant about it. He's like, better cold than hot, right? Or something along those lines. Yeah, better too cold than not cold enough.
Jackson is he went to someone who's high up at the fishery. He didn't just go to like some low-level dude. Like, Jackson is higher ranking than him and seemed to be like someone who would be knowledgeable.
True,
but the more problem I would have is, why didn't Jackson go to Kvothe?
I think what it was that made it more so that way for me is I caught the attention of one of the more experienced artificers, as he walked past. So to me, it seemed a bit lazy. Maybe lazy is not the right word, but as he walked past, just sort of suggested to me. And again, I'm putting myself in the seat of the first reader, because I remember that kind of jumped out at me. And after the fact, Kilvin's like, yeah, Jackson's on his shit list, basically, because he told Kvothe that Kvothe brought it up, and Jackson didn't do shit. Now we also know that Jackson.
It seems like Kvothe went to chain of command and went to a guy that is below Kilvin, but should know better. Yeah. And Kilvin obviously thought he should know better, and so once he tells him, and that guy is like, "Oh, better too cold than hot,"
Well, but then I was gonna say he went, "Ha ha, kaboom!" Like, okay,
I thought
pretty flippant,
man. I thought.
He was so dismissive that put Kvothe at his ease.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah,
and I'm sure if Jackson was one of the more experienced guys, he's been around Bonetar. This is Kvothe's first time around it. So, like, if he had gone to Manette and Manette said the same thing, I would have been like, well, if Manette's not worried about it, then why am I worried about it? Manette, he's been around this shit before, so. Like, once that guy fucking says, no big deal, then, that doesn't seem outlandish for him to be like, okay.
So when we get, oh my God, the pace just jumps the fuck off. Like, he has a knack. Rothfuss has a real knack for writing these action-packed sequences where the pace literally, I almost feel like I want to break it down in terms of like the word, like how he gets it to flow so quickly, because it doesn't matter how many times I read it, you just get drawn in and the pace just quickens. And it happens again later in this group of chapters that we're going to cover. It's so effective.
Yeah. And it's besides just like the breakdown of the words themselves, but every sentence jumps from, and is such a great description of what's actually happening. Every sentence just gives you, here's what happened next. Here's what happened next. Here's what happened next.
It's so killer too, because you hear popping and cracking. You see really ominous signs. So you get some smell. You get like he brings in the physicality, like when he hits his hip on a table, like it's freaking great, man. He's sweating. He's doing all these things.
I felt a flash of cold sweat roll over me when I saw black liquid leaking from one corner and running down the work table's leg to pool on the floor. The thick timber of the table's leg was almost entirely eaten away, and I heard a light popping and crackling as the liquid pooling on the floor began to boil. All I could think of was Kilvin's statement during the demonstration. In addition to being highly corrosive, the gas burns when it comes in contact with air. Even as I turned to look, the leg gave way and the work table began to tip. The burnished metal canister tumbled down. When it struck the stone floor, the metal was so cold it didn't simply crack or dent, it shattered like glass. Gallons of dark fluid burst out in a splay across the workshop floor, the room filled with sharp crackling and popping sounds as the bone tar spread across the warm stone floor and started to boil.
Man. Yeah, what an incredible description that is.
Well, and it's perfect too because he's already built the danger.
Yeah, and then he explains how the floors are slanted, so it pulls down into things, and then you can picture fella being trapped in a corner where it's pulled down into two different paths that are both blocking her exit, and she's kind of just being like squared in and painted into a corner. And like
at that point, it hadn't even ignited yet.
Yeah, but she sees that fog, and it's a thick. It sounds like a thick, heavy fog that is surrounding her and boxing her in, and it's ready to catch flame. So she's in a hell of a position.
Yeah, he describes literally, which is so great, man, because he's describing the fishery is built to handle this sort of thing. Not this specifically, but it's built to handle this. So you get that physicality again with the floor, and then as you were both mentioning, at the same time it continued to boil, forming thick, low clouds, dark as tar, caustic, and ready to burst into flame. And then we get the description of fella being trapped between these two big spreading arms of dark fog.
Yeah, and it gives a good description. Like he does a really good job here where he points to the how big the danger is for her. She was dressed practically for work in the shop. Light trousers and gauzy linen shirt cuffed at the elbow. Her long, dark hair was pulled back into a tail, but still hung down to nearly the small of her back. She would burn like a torch. But I do like that she wasn't wearing a stupid cloak. That was a nice touch.
Do we get a I didn't quite grasp how he got the drench glass to shatter. I mean, how did he use his own blood to make that thing break?
Well, good.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, he explains it to Kilvin. I had the same question when I read through it, because he talks about how he does it, but then it's still a little bit left. Rothfuss is fucking great, man, because he tells you the specifics of what he does, in that he grabs a glass hemisphere, he dashes it against one of the basalt blocks, it shatters, and he's left with a thin, curved shard of broken glass about the size of a palm. With his other hand, he grabs his cloak from the table, strides past the fume hood, and then he cuts his finger, presses his thumb against the edge of the piece of glass, and, we get blood, felt an unpleasant tugging sensation followed by a sharp pain, knowing I'd drawn blood. I smeared my thumb across the glass, spoke a binding. As I came to stand in front of the drench, I dropped the glass to the floor, concentrated, stepped down hard, crushing it with my heel. Now, what's interesting is when I saw that, and then he goes into how he felt it.
That's how he did it.
The cold. Well, yeah, but it still wasn't really clear. So I'm like, I couldn't understand why he got so drenched, like what exactly happened. And then Kilvin talks about it about 10 pages later where he says, oh, so you broke my binding. He's like, if the binding can make it work, then you can unwrite the binding and break the binding. So by breaking the binding, the drench just completely let go of all of the water. If I read
No. What he knew the binding for the
glass.
The glass. Like breaking the binding didn't break the glass. What broke the glass is he knew the binding, so he was able to bind the glass that he had in the shard of glass that he had in his hand. And he bound it to the drench, the glass of the drench, and he used his blood on both to also bind those together. Then he stepped on the glass the shard that he had, and he splintered that. And by splintering that splintered the glass of the drench, and it broke. But it wasn't because he broke the binding. He used the binding of how to make the twice tough glass to strengthen the connection between the shattered glass and the drench, so that when he smashed it would shatter that.
That's interesting.
That's what the binding. I guess he just knew how to bind them together because he knew the binding of twice tough glass.
I guess I get what confused me is when he explains it to Kvothe. He says, "I know the sigildry for twice tough glass. What I can make, I can break." So it's more direct than I thought. He's literally just breaking the glass by breaking the glass.
Yeah,
it's not as if he's unwriting the sigildry. Which is what I took that from when he wrote
the sigildry onto the shard.
No. He didn't write the sigildry onto the shard.
No, he spoke. He spoke the binding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. He didn't write.
It had nothing to do with. It had no sigildry was involved. It was pure. It's the same as when he stabs the guy and. When he's fighting the bandits in the woods, when he binds one bowstring to 5 different bowstrings and he cuts it and he splits all their bowstrings, that's what he was doing. Except he knew the binding of the twice tough glass, so that's how he was able to bind the shattered glass to the twice tough glass and then break it.
What I love about this so much is and I see this with the Dracus, and I see this with the scene you just described. He very quickly just like assesses the scene, assesses what is around him, and then just goes. He doesn't think much. He just acts. And the way it's written is he's simply acting. It's what's so great about him talking to Kvothe about it later is we get to slow that back down and go back to the scene and then rehash what actually happened and like so get to see it sort of in slow motion after we saw it in full time. Or in real time. It's fucking great, man. Like, because he does it so quick. And this speaks to like what we've talked about so many times, or what I rehash so many times, is that he's at his best when he's not thinking so much. When he's simply acting, he does the most heroic things that he does.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
and
except maybe with Florian.
He even mentions that.
With Florian, it's different. It's the sleeping mind type thing. But whatever, we can stay on this.
I like too that the way he describes him jumping through the fire to get to her, like I could picture it vividly in my head.
Yeah.
I felt a brief, intense flash of heat on my hands and face, but my wet clothing kept me from being burned or catching fire. Since my eyes were closed, I landed awkwardly, banging my hip against the stone top of a work table. I ignored it and ran to Fella. Like the jumping through the flame, like a fog that is catching fire, jumping through that in the air, and then the nice added touch of he doesn't just like fucking land it perfectly and like standing in front of Fella like ta-da. He's got his eyes closed, bangs into a table awkwardly, and then goes running up to her, fucking telling her to put her arms down, and then drapes his cloak. His nerdy cloak over, which finally came in use, and then he jumps back through.
Those details are huge, man. When like his hip hitting the table, which kind of causes him a bit ajar. It makes it more heroic in the sense that it's more real. Like you said, if he just jumps, ta-da! He's just this magical hero that is. It just makes it so much more concrete for us because he is infallible. He has to be, or we don't buy it. You know what I mean? It makes it so much more, and it's more palpable because we're reminded of the physicality with him hitting the table. And it's a small thing, but it makes such a big difference. And like you said, then also the awkward. It's a bit awkward that her hands are up, and then it's like arms down, and he doesn't know if she can really hear him, but she follows that idea anyway. And then it's also like he doesn't carry her out like Prince Gallant in front of him. He throws her over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes. So it's not the storybook style, and it's pointing that out. And it's very effective because you buy it all. It seems so realistic because it's more concrete in those senses.
Yeah, and then also, too, another aspect of that is I drew a deep breath just before I hit the fire, but the air was sharp and acrid. I coughed reflexively and sucked down another lungful of the burning air just as I'd entered the wall of flame. I felt the sharp chill of the fog around my lower legs, and there was fire all around me as I ran, coughing and drawing in more bad air. I grew dizzy and tasted ammonia. Some distant, rational part of my mind thought, of course, to make it volatile. Then nothing.
Yeah, you made a big mistake.
Yeah, like banging into the table, breathing in the bad air, passing out.
Breathing in the bad air is the real mistake, because you have to know, man. You can't. He's not left with a lot of choices, but that's the knockout. That's what takes him out.
What you. But if you think about it, that's your whole instinct. You gotta breathe.
Yeah. Well, you're about to move, so you got to get a good breath now to be able to make this big move, and that's what takes him out.
So I want to get clarity here, because I didn't really know. Seems like, he took that second breath and then he said, and that was it. So I know he had gone through the wall of fire. Did Kvothe make it out, or just get he and Fella out of that initial harm's way and somebody pull him out?
Yeah, they got out. They got out, and then he dropped her and then passed out. Yeah.
He got through the wall of fire, and then, I always picture he
clearly
he just basically fell down and probably dumped her.
Right.
Like, she probably fell
to safety. I just didn't know. Yeah. I just didn't know if he had actually, how far did he make it out? Just past that wall of fire? Did he, get all the way outside?
You would think, if someone had to drag them both to safety after that, or she had to drag him to safety, it would have been mentioned. So it seems like he got them out and then passed out.
It's cool. It's cool that it's a little bit. He doesn't tie the loose end on that. Yeah. It's. Right. I mean, it's better that way, because we're left hanging. I mean, talk about a cliffhanger. For all we know, he's gonna die. We don't fucking know. We keep reading.
That's the other aspect of it. He doesn't even end the chapter there. That's normally a chapter ender, and he's just a pause, a break in the chapter, and then. When I woke, the first thing that sprang into my mind was not what you might expect. So the first thing he's thinking about is what the fuck time is it? Shit, I missed my fucking lunch with Denna.
Yeah.
No surprise there.
Speaks to, again, how freaking desperate he is, in love with her.
But no, I mean, he said he's not in love with her.
Yeah.
He said that explicitly.
So obviously he's not.
He says that explicitly.
She's not my girlfriend, guys.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't even like her, man. I don't even talk
like her. I just like her.
She doesn't like me.
We're friends, man. We're friends. I'm going to be her friend.
Such a jackass.
But it's
a couple of dorks.
It is pretty great. These little reminders, man. We know, because we're constantly reminded, he's worried about money and all that. But once he loses his shoes, it becomes very real. Oh yeah, so that's it? He's going to walk around barefoot until he can afford to get a pair of fucking shoes. Yeah. It's one thing to know he's got two shirts, but unless you're living his life, you don't really get that. But to be forced to have to walk around barefoot because you literally don't have another pair of shoes, he's a hero, but he's walking around with no shoes.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. It kind of throws him back to when... what was it? After he steps out of when he's back in Tarbean, he steps out on the cobblestone at some point and realizes he doesn't have shoes. For whatever reason, it threw me back there, because he's like, I don't have another pair of shoes. But I've been barefoot before, and it doesn't bother him, and he just heads straight right away out to the Aeolian without even thinking twice, barefoot.
Yeah, I like the touch though of just Sim going into his room. And him just being like, oh, Jesus Christ. It's like this dude.
Yeah, I like the thing.
Because it's not like Sim's, a broke student. Sim's from a wealthy, noble family. Sim's not struggling. And so then Sim goes in there and he's like, I couldn't find another pair of shoes. And he only has 2 shirts. So he only had 1 shirt that he could choose from. Can't find any shoes. It's like, fuck. You just saw how fucking destitute I really am. And then Sim just waves it off who gives a fuck?
Yeah. Yeah, at least he doesn't mention it anyway.
Yeah, he waves the comment off It's not a thing to him. He doesn't care. That's not why they're friends. He doesn't care about that shit. So, but Kvothe is
he should care.
deeply
Should have bought him some new shoes.
Yeah, that would have been the cool thing to do. But Kvothe would have fucking probably got pissed at Sim for doing it because he's so fucking prideful.
Yeah, no question.
But yeah, then he goes to the Aeolian, finds that Denna has left, and he's like, Diak's like, she asked about you, he said consolingly, and waited for a good long while too, almost an hour, longest I've ever seen that one sit still. Did she leave with someone? Diak looked down at his hands where he was toying with a copper penny, rolling it back and forth over his knuckles. She's not really the sort of girl who spends a lot of time alone. She turned a few away, but eventually leave with a fellow. I don't think she was really with him, if you catch my meaning. She's been looking for a patron, and this fellow had that sort of look about him. White-haired, wealthy, you know the type. If you happen to see her, could you tell her? I paused, trying to think of how I could describe what had happened. Can you make unavoidably detained sound a little more poetic? So, Denna meets her patron, and that's our
strong turning point in their relationship.
Yeah, but we get the only real description we get of her patron is that it's a white-haired, wealthy man. So we know he's an older guy, and
what if he's albino?
He's probably noble-esque.
What if he's seen something really scary? Got a real good scare.
Noble grounds.
Here's what's going to happen, Dan. You're going to find out that he's not old. He's an albino this whole time. Rothfuss really faked us out on that one.
Nah, that's a stupid theory.
He's young.
That's not good at all.
What if some people in this world just have white hair?
Yeah, albinos. What are you talking about?
Do albinos?
They would have said red eyes,
white hair,
something.
Yeah, I guess they do.
Yeah, so he has a touch of albinism, or most likely he's older. But he's
but if he was albino, he would have been burned at the stake. So
jeez,
we don't get any
no
mentions. Way he would be wealthy.
We don't get mentions of albinism in the two books.
Yeah, exactly. Why do you think that is?
I don't think that word means what you think it means.
They get wiped out as soon as that is seen. They're gone.
Well, that's a jump.
Gene pool.
That's a jump. It could just be Rothfuss hasn't mentioned them. It could also be they don't exist. Albinism isn't a thing in their world. That could be.
I don't think albinism is a word in our world.
No.
Yeah, it is.
Is it?
No.
I don't think so. 2 against 1.
Up.
You could be 2 against 1 all you want. You're just both wrong. I don't give a fuck.
Now, hey, we'll take a quick poll on it. Who's right? Me and Fitz, or Tim? I'm going with me and Fitz.
Well, everyone listening,
me and Dan.
Everyone listening knows you're both stupid, so we're good.
Well, you're an idiot. So.
Albinism.
I
visited my cousin in albinism last week.
You know what? At the end of the day, it is what it is.
Oh my god. So this dude, I mean, obviously he is Billy Badass. He's got all these burns all over his body. Still walks all the way to the Aeolian. We're not there yet, but still fucking makes his emitters. Like, holy shit. But yeah, so he goes back to Anchors, and we get another taste of him listening to his heroic acts, which he enjoys so much.
Yeah. Yeah, Kvothe and his hubris, the nerve.
I like that too, that he's like just like Prince Gallant after he was describing it as unlike Prince Gallant.
Yeah, it is funny. That kind of speaks to when he hears his own story. He's like, but this time it was real. This wasn't some made up shit. So it is like Prince Gallant. I'm fucking, yeah, man. He's really feeling himself.
Yeah. He loves hearing about how badass he is. This dude really loves stories about himself. Fucking goes, especially like when he gets back from Severin and he's just fucking going to bar after bar and listening to his stories, and then he would like pull his cloak up and let it billow in the air, and then like when they would notice him, then he would sing them some of his songs about Florian, and he'd fucking ham it up. Like, this dude, he loves when people talk about him.
Yeah, he's starting to become a bit of a character. Well, he's becoming a bit of a caricature in those senses, but, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially that the shade, whatever, when it, like, billows on its own. That's another step of nerdiness right there, man. Like, I picture, like, I don't know, there's certain video games where it's like, you know, it just constantly billows. There's no wind. No one else is getting hit with wind, but it's just majestic. Like, this guy thinks he's fucking Link from Zelda or something. Like,
yeah, he's got the magic cloak now. He's got the and the magic stick.
It does sound pretty badass. I can't lie about that. Having the shade does sound there'd be some real utility there.
Yeah, it that one at least has some utility where he can hide himself, where he can't even be seen in the dark. So it's a little less nerdy, but he nerds it up with his fucking going to bars and letting it fucking billow and look at me. Hey, you know, the redheaded hero, look who has red hair with a weird cloak.
That weird cloak. That's something, man. Shadow cloak.
Yeah, but that was made by the woman no one else can tame.
Yeah, and the
it's
only
pretty big feather in your hat.
Anything of it really is Alodin. Shows how knowledgeable he is.
So you're saying nobody notices that it's a shadow cloak besides him?
Nobody notices that it's from the Fae besides him. Like, and Alodin does immediately as soon as he sees it.
But other people see it, right?
It's like, yeah, they see the cloak, but they just think it's a
Don't
cloak.
get it.
Yeah, they're not connecting the dots. Alodin knows immediately as soon as he sees him. Right. He like goes up and stops him.
It's like, when did you become in shade? And he's like, what? And he's like, don't you know what you're wearing? He's like, yeah, I know what I'm wearing. I'm surprised you do. He's like, oh, I wouldn't be much of a namer if I couldn't see a fairy cloak, 5 feet away from me. But
I'm done with 66.
That was pretty much it for 66 for me.
Yep.
Yeah, that's all I had. Actually, there was one more thing. Mola, when they're at the when she's bandaging Kvothe up, she congratulated him for becoming Eltha. What's that?
No, he congratulated her.
That's the next level up.
Yeah, you go from Alir to Relar to Eltha.
Okay.
After that, you're basically...
Then it's Giller, or Arcanist, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, then. Chapter 67 is titled A Matter of Hands. Kvothe heads back to the fishery after lunch and finishes his blue emitters. Kilvin enters and, after briefly razzing Kvothe, thanks him for saving Fella's life. Kvothe learns that the sigildry on his canister was probably damaged and that Kilvin contained the fire with sympathy and a heat eater. Kvothe also learns a little more about the reality of naming and Alodin's skill in that. Guys?
Yeah, I love this chapter. This one,
I love Kilvin. Kilvin chapter.
This reaction is so great. Like,
his joke is so out of character. It's great, though.
Yeah.
It's so good. Goes in there to fix those emitters. He's desperate for money, so he's not fucking missing that opportunity to get those out there. He's got, no shoes and one shirt. He needs money, so he's getting that shit finished.
While I understand,
I still thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, I was going to say, while I understand the justification, it's all there, and the justification's all there, it's still very impressive, man. Like, he's doing something that's extraordinarily difficult and extraordinarily dangerous, and he's got bandages all over him. Like, he can't even use one of his thumbs.
Yeah.
Like, that's very impressive, man. And I don't think anyone would expect that of him, which is one of the reasons why it's so impressive. And the way it's presented, it's very matter of fact.
Yeah, it's, he's desperate. He's in a terrible situation, and he is extremely determined to do what he's got to do to fucking make it at the university. And that's a huge demonstration of all those aspects in one right there. And then, I love his reaction with the whole thing with Kilvin's great. Like the Through the window, I could see Kilvin waving his arms like a farmer shooing crows. His hands were swathed in white bandages nearly to the elbow. Enough, he said. I will tend them myself. The man caught hold of one of Kilvin's arms and made adjustments to the bandages. Kilvin pulled his hands away and held them high in the air out of reach. Linsafa, enough is enough, the man said, something too quiet for me to hear, but Kilvin continued to shake his head. No, and no more of your drugs. I've slept long enough. Kilvin motioned me inside. Ilir Kvothe, I need to speak to you. And so great.
I don't know, Dan, if it ever really says, but how long about was it before, how long was Kvothe out?
It doesn't say. I'm assuming,
I mean, this is all the same day.
Because he went in the morning, and it seemed to happen fairly soon, and then by the time he wakes up, it's, afternoon. So, maybe an hour or so, couple hours, whatever, like probably a couple hours, long enough where he missed his lunch with dinner.
And I think they say that Kvothe works on the emitters for a couple hours, if I remember right.
Something like that. I don't know.
They say that? Yeah. So, yeah, anyway, it's been a while.
Yeah, and then I like Kilvin bringing him in there, showing him his cloak and his burn-up cloak and rolling out the, what was it called? The sympathy lamp. And he glanced at my feet. He glanced at my feet, still scowling, and why are you unshod? Even Ilir should have better sense than to wander naked-footed in a place such as this. Your behavior lately has been reckless. I am dismayed. As I fumbled about for an explanation, Kilvin's grim expression spread into a sudden smile. I am joking with you, of course, he said gently. I owe you a great weight of thanks for pulling Rilar fella from the fire today. And then he reached to pat him, but couldn't because his hands were all bandaged up. But I love that because that is 100% something I would do in that situation. To give like an example, like I used to go to, when I worked at this restaurant, I would tell people, I would walk up to them and be like, hey man, what'd you do? And they'd be like, what do you mean? I was like, dude, the manager, he is furious with you. Like, I don't know what you did, like, but he was yelling at me to like grab you. Like, what, you don't know what you did? And they're like, no. And I was like, well, he wants to talk to you. And then they would go back there all apprehensive and like running through scenarios in their head of things that they could have possibly done to get him in trouble. And then they'd go back there and they'd be like, hey, Dan said you wanted to talk to me? And you're like, no, Dan sends people back here all the time. And like I was just purely making it up, but I would send people to his office like they're going to the principal fucking all the time. Fucking terrified they're going to get fired.
I love the whole, because also he's this is not really built into his character thus far. So we're all with Kvothe, where it's like, fuck, is he actually mad at him? He's like, yeah. And I guess you could be like, doesn't have his shoes on. Here's that lamp he's not supposed to let other people get.
It would make me like Kilvin a lot less. Like if he was
no
fucking
shit.
strict,
like,
and
are
be
you
like, dude,
kidding me?
Down. Yeah,
I'm supposed to keep my cloak. I passed out saving someone's life. Like, yeah, is this fucking candid camera? What's going on here?
Kilvin got me on this too because there's no indication that he's joking, and he does have a way about him up to this point of being dead serious and not joking around. So I believed it.
And he's kind of rough to begin with. So yeah, that's why it works so well, man. I did also think it was really interesting because he goes on to mention these things were also in your cloak. Many things. Your pockets were full as a tinker's pack. There's these mentionings or these comparisons to a tinker that happen repeatedly with Kvothe. I feel like, and I know we've talked about this, but I do feel like...
Oh, I didn't notice that.
The branch of, like, his inheritance, or, like, I feel like the Rue kind of branch, or have a close branch to Tinkers. They obviously have a lot of respect for them. We know that. But I feel like there's some sort of connection between the two. I mean, it's a small thing that he mentions. He's making a comparison that maybe is just physically obvious, but with just, him having a bunch of things. But I don't know. It just kind of jumped out at me.
It might be the reason why Kvothe has an affinity towards a lot of pockets in those cloaks, just so he can carry a lot of little trinkets and like a tinker with trinkets.
Yeah, maybe. And, he was homeless for a long time, so there's also the practicality of, he needs that dried apple and string and whatever else he usually carries.
And just how generally cool it is to have a cloak.
It's like cargo pants, it is cool like cargo pants are. Because you got lots of
baseball cards in there.
It is like cargo pants. He's got his packs of gum.
Wearing cargo pants with colored pencils and sandals.
Think he's got jacks.
Well, look, man. Crocs. This dude would be wearing cargo pants with white socks and Crocs.
Or Birkenstocks, the ones that cut between the, or at least the sandals that cut between the big toe and the captain.
He's 100%.
What, you don't like those?
Kvothe would also.
I like to wear those with socks.
He wouldn't have the money.
That's what I'm describing.
He would buy the Crocs, but he wouldn't have the money for the toe. Where it's like socks that go over each of your individual toes, those shoes.
Oh, the Vibrams.
Yeah. Like he wouldn't have the money for those, but he would dream of those. Like, oh man, like those would be so good. I could be strengthening my feet, and oh man, those are dope looking. I wish I could afford those. That would be like fella would be getting him those. She would have got him some cargo pants and fucking some toe shoes. He would have been fucking.
He probably got the generic ones.
Yeah,
you get the generic ones from the pawn shop that really is just like a size 5 and little holes poked into the end.
Yeah,
it just doesn't have the toes.
So they end up being like the
fingerless gloves too.
Yeah. I was gonna say
fingerless gloves. I could.
So he's got fingerless gloves and toeless Vibrams.
Yeah,
that's a funny image, man. He's gripping. He's gripping. Man. He's gripping with his hands. He's gripping with his feet. Man, he's killing it.
Sharp.
The other thing we get is that chain Aiden coat, which I brought up a couple times. That's where you get the coat means disaster, which is
definitely
that's
definitely reminding me of that disaster coat being a disaster that you spoke about before.
Well, and it really deepens how the book starts. I mean, because remember when we talked about it, it's so like just deep and like depressed or like oppressive in terms of how bad his life is and how bad whatever happened, has happened that unleashed hell on the world. And to again take on the name of what means disaster, man, he's dramatic. Yeah. He's a dramatic guy.
Yeah, he didn't take on a name of like slightly bad times.
Yeah, he could have gone by Bone Tar, but he didn't do that.
Yeah.
He went by Disaster.
Yeah, so he clearly in his mind did something really fucked up. Or someone else gave him the name Disaster, and that also could be significant.
Because you remember what I said about it, he could be the master, change to the master Disaster, and become a professional wrestler at some point.
Yeah, that could be it too.
Well, he's got the stage. He's got the stage presence for it. He's got the training. He could really pull that off.
I could see,
especially after being with
him in the ring.
Especially after being with the Adam. Yeah. I want to again.
He'd come in with a cloak on. It'd be ringside with a cloak.
100%. Yes, and those fingerless gloves, 100%. Yeah, the toeless shoes. Kvothe the Arcane, just running around the ring,
throwing dust in people's face.
Man, how the mighty have fallen. He's doing this for entertainment.
And the little like things that make the little snap pops that you throw on the ground, that make a popping sound. He throws that at people's feet.
He's got a move that's like a flying pile driver that's called bringing down lightning, and when he does it, the loudspeakers go.
So wait,
thunder.
And
what
then,
we
like,
are describing
if Kvothe
is...
was an actual person and he was listening, he was like, you guys realize, like, I fucking murdered, like, 20 dudes by myself. And you guys are talking about me like I'm some fucking puss that fucking's wearing stupid clothes. Yeah, we're definitely big nerd. I fucking
describing him in a way that...
have you slept with?
She made me this cloak, okay?
Well, I banged Florian, and I made her want me.
This is definitely...
whatever, Kvothe. Nice cloak.
Kvothe the Arcane, as a wrestler, is a larger fall from grace than I think the book starts. I think it's worse. Yeah. Like, talk about prostituting yourself, like the Adem don't like you singing. Like, now he's wrestling
for He's got a big gut. He's got, like, a huge beer belly. Always, like, sweating constantly, just pouring down his face, big bushy beard. I can picture it. Like, tries to do his magic, can't do it because he's always drunk.
So him and Bast are like the Bash brothers?
Yeah, I think that is a very good possibility for how book 3 ends. He tells his story to Chronicler, and then he goes off into the sunset to become a professional wrestler.
Maybe it's Chronicler's idea, and Chronicler serves as like his manager.
Yeah, he's
like, you know what? We can make this work.
He's that WWF manager guy.
Yeah, I can't think of his name.
Like
Jimmy.
What about the
mortician? Mean Gene.
Oh, you're talking about Mean Gene. No, but remember, Mean Gene would interview the managers. So you like the Hart brothers had that guy. I forget what his name
the guy
was.
that looked like Elvis or something. He kind of had an Elvis look. Yeah,
or
Jimmy
the Undertaker had the more. Yeah, Jimmy. Or the Undertaker had the mortician who would be like, next Friday, it's going to be a disaster.
Wow, this is all so
Remember
stupid.
that guy?
Like, it's also, it's so ridiculous. The whole thing is, it's hard for me to remember because I was only entertained by it when I was
only
really
worked.
That's Bast, though.
That stuff only worked before the internet. Like, the 80s can't exist if the internet had existed already. That, like, their idea of the future, like, growing up in the 80s, like, everybody's idea of the future is so completely distorted from what had actually happened. We're like, oh, we're in the age of technology with our fucking tape decks that we're walking around with.
And the massive Zach Morris phone.
Yeah, like, you know, like in Rocky.
Yeah, I got a phone in my car.
Robot in Rocky 3 or whatever, Rocky 4, when he's got the robot that his brother-in-law like kind of has a weird thing for.
I don't
See
know.
what? That's why War Games. Why War Games was the shit for the 80s, because War Games was like introduce you to the internet, and they're like, look, you put this phone, this dial-up phone, on this little thing, and you go access to the world. And I get on track with the military because that's who's using it. That's the only one who really knew what the future would be. Was beholden. Yeah,
very much. But
Great movie, by the way.
I like.
Okay. I don't recommend it.
I love that movie.
You
don't recommend anything, Dan.
Yeah, he doesn't recommend anything.
Not old. I don't like stuff in the past. There's stuff that are existing now. Just move on with your life.
There's nothing to be offered by films of the past.
No, I don't believe in examining the past. Just look forward as we rehash a book that came out 10 years ago.
I love the this is part of the Kvothe that I like so much, is when he Kilman's like, yeah, I'm not going to be of much use, at least with his hands, for a few span, and Kvothe offers to, like, basically do his bidding, and help him. And then he's like, well, there's certain work that involves sigildry that, Kvothe doesn't have access to. And Kvothe's like, well, promote me to Raylar, so I may better serve you.
Your hands?
I love shit like that, where he's just like, yeah, do it. I got you. So I like those moves. And then they move on to the explanation we talked about earlier, where what went wrong with the canister. And then Kelvin immediately too cold, which we already knew. And then he goes into the actual details about how the canister sigildry was damaged, so it grew colder and colder when the regent froze, and then cracked the inner glass like a bottle of beer when it freezes, and ate through the metal of the canister.
What I really love is the description of them going through what really happened versus what the rumors are going around, because obviously it's very similar to the book as a whole, is the truth behind the myth. And so you get an example of that in his story, is the how these myths build out so quickly. Like, it's just happened, and there's already myths floating around, and multiple myth stories for both Kvothe and him. It's not just him. Like, everybody ramps it up. No matter what happens, everybody, like, it's a heroic thing on its own, and they did some crazy shit on their own, but people run with it and take a story that's already at a 10 and they amp it up to its 1.
Well, and it's obviously plausible because of the world they live in, because there's a Tabberlin the Great, because there are these capabilities, that it's plausible that their mind would take it to that extra level. Don't you think? I mean,
yeah, because he's like, how did you manage it? Good question. How do you think? Well, I heard one student say you strode out of your office and called the fire's name just like Tabberlin the Great. You said, "Fire, be still," and the fire obeyed. Kvothe gave a great laugh. I like that story, he said, grinning wildly behind his beard.
Well, I like. There's two things. There's two things there I really like. One, Kvothe, always the good teacher. How do you think? So he's always prodding Kvothe to think, and this is what a teacher should do. Think it out. What could I have done? What are the possibilities? And they go back and forth with, telling the truth of the matter as to what really happened.
But I have a question for you. How did you make it through the fire? The regent produces a most intense flame. How is it you are not burned? I used a drench to wet myself, Master Kvothe. Jackson saw you leaping through the fire just moments after the regent spilled. The drench is quick, but not so quick as that. I'm afraid I broke it, Master Kvothe. It seemed the only way. And then you get him going what? How in all the 4 corners did you manage to break my drench, Alir Kvothe? His tone was so puzzled that I actually laughed. Well, Master Kvothe, according to students, I staved it in with a single blow of my mighty hand. Kvothe grinned again. I like that story too, but I do not believe it. More reputable sources claim I used a piece of bar iron from a nearby table. And you are a fine boy, but this twice tough glass was made by my own hands. Broad-shouldered Kamar couldn't break it with an anvil hammer. Let others tell whatever stories they wish, but between us, let us share secrets. It's no great mystery, I admitted. I know the sigildry for twice tough glass. What I can make, I can break. But what was your source? You could have nothing ready on such sorts noticed. I held up my bandaged thumb. Blood? Using heat of your own blood could be called reckless, Alir Kvothe. What if binders chilled? What if you had gone into hypothermic shock? My other options were rather limited, Master Kvothe. Quite impressive to unbind what I have wrought with nothing more than blood. So, again, you get Kvothe doing something that just flabbergasts Kvothe. This happens multiple times where Kvothe's like, how the fuck did you do that? And Kvothe... And just keep in mind, Kvothe, just before this, a couple chapters before this, did a 6-way binding like it was fucking nothing.
Yeah. Well, and obviously,
you think there's any chance that Kvothe might actually been able to call the name of fire?
Nah, they talk.
Want to admit it.
They talk about that. He doesn't know the name of fire. There are other. They talk about how Loden does, and that's where they get into, but how does it work? And this is his first time trying to delve into that. But I wanted to mention before we get into that, it's interesting that they talk about how reckless it is to use your blood, yet it seems like Kvothe's doing it a lot. He uses blood for, as his source. I mean, it speaks to, I guess he is, in a way he is quite reckless. However, he's also tremendous. It's not just his Alar, right? He's way more capable. He's capable of doing things at degrees that shouldn't make sense. We saw that with him. We saw that in another circumstance up to this, which doesn't come to mind immediately. Maybe I can't remember exactly, but the fact that he's able to do these things, he has, extraordinary talents. So that fits in with the fact that he can utilize his blood in ways that don't kill him. But yeah, it could also be read as reckless because he does it quite a bit.
Yeah, in dire situations, he doesn't do it like, the two big ones he does it in. This situation to save Fella's life, and then also to save Dedan and Hespa, and save himself and Tempe and Martin from the bandits. So he does it in situations where it's appropriate to take that risk. But the fact that it blows the doors off of a guy that is as talented and powerful as Kvothe says a lot about how fucking badass Kvothe really is.
Well, and as experienced. I mean, he knows Elodin. He's seen plenty of people roll through the university over the years that are extraordinarily powerful and above Kvothe. Kvothe's an Alir, right?
Yeah.
So I mean it speaks.
He hasn't
volumes.
even been there a year. He's not even been there a year yet, and he's still he's been blowing Kilvin's mind from day one. That's why Kilvin likes him so much.
Yeah.
You just sees how impressive he is. Yeah, and then you get with Kvothe asking Kilvin, what happened. Kilvin's like, if Elodin had been here, matters would have been much simpler. But as the name of fire is unknown to me, I was left to my own devices. And he goes through Elodin. Elodin knows the name of fire. Kilvin nodded. There may be one or two others at the university, but Elodin has the surest grip of it. The name of fire, I said slowly. And they could have called it, and the fire would have done what they said, like Taborlin the Great. Kilvin nodded again. But those are just stories. Where do you think the stories come from, Alir Kvothe? Every tale has deep roots somewhere in the world. So, you get how powerful naming is. If Elodin had been there, he could have just commanded the fire to stop. And stopped it, and stilled it, and made it go away. That's crazy level of power if you can do something that, that magical.
I love that line, every tale has deep roots somewhere in the world, which speaks to, because Kvothe is still but those are just stories. How much of this is real? Because he's still skeptical of magic, quote unquote, right? But Kilvin is letting him know, that's based in reality, man. People, yes, this is possible. What's really interesting about that to me is this comes right after they were talking about the stories of what Kilvin did and the stories of what Kvothe did and what was actually real. So it's that balancing act moves into this. It's a very appropriate time for that conversation to occur and to speak about, where Kvothe's at in terms of his skepticism and accepting the real capabilities of what can happen, in this world and with these individuals that have those powers.
It's a nice info dump here. Keeps it, and I'm happy to have it for just what little bit we learn about naming.
Yeah, and he even goes as far as ask Elodin. He makes a habit of studying such things. So I mean, that's a big door open, man. That's a huge all right, we're going down this path now.
Yeah, that's one of your first discussions of naming since Abinthy called The Name of the Wind. There's and he sees Elodin do his stuff at when they go into the crookery, but beyond that, there's not a lot of discussion of naming. And then this is one where you got Kilvin, who is matter-of-factly saying, someone, if they knew the name of fire, could have just called the name of fire and stopped this easily. And so
that's wild.
So it solidifies it in the world. And then he also, later on, he sees Elxadal call the name of fire. We actually get to see someone call it and then he sticks his hand in the fire.
Yeah, that's real magic. That's where it's oh shit.
Yeah.
But how do you personally picture the heat eater he's describing?
Well, it's small, isn't it?
I just picture the energy that you need, like for a fire, like to take place, that this thing just absorbs all the heat from the fire so that it extinguishes it, like kind of like sucking all the air out of the room, except for it's sucking all the heat out of the fire.
What did Debbie put on her table when they were battling?
She put like a little fire, a little torch thing.
So a fire source rather than
that was the opposite of a heat eater. She wasn't sucking the energy out of the room. She was putting a massive amount of energy in the room at her disposal.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't equating them. It's just I'm trying to picture an apparatus.
I think of it like, like in Ghostbusters when they throw the device down and it sucks the ghost in, except for it is sucking the energy out of the room. But in the way it's done is he's doing some kind of binding.
Yeah,
he's binding
to focus on something
the energy in the room to that heat eater where it absorbs it somehow. I don't know exactly how it's done, but obviously there's some through that process it caused him to burn his hands, pretty badly.
For a show, a television show, or for a movie, this could look amazing, but they better have a big budget for special effects.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it could be fucking tremendous, but yeah, they're gonna have to drop some dime on special effects for this particular scene.
So one part about the scene that I enjoy is, or at least the science of it. It's actually not a real crazy concept for a heat eater to exist. Not that they do, but what heat is just its molecules moving really fast, and what cold is that the lack of that. So if you think of it like a vacuum tube or something to that effect, where something that can just
kinda
quickly absorb.
Yeah, like displacement. It's interesting. Well, it's interesting too because he keeps saying, "Okay, but there's no way." He says, "Even so, there's no way. It must have been." And he's trying to calculate like how much, and Kvothe immediately, I estimate 850 million thongs, though we must check the trap for a more accurate number. Again, he's like, but how? Which is fucking great. So Kvothe and Kvothe are both in awe of each other in the sense of like, how are you able to do this? Like, it's fucking great.
Yeah, quickly, but then he held up his hands.
You guys know what BTU
easily.
is.
Well, I also love, I love when he brings it up. He was like, how'd you do it so easily? He's like, you think it was easy? Is that what came across?
I look at my fucking hands, boy. He's like,
what were you saying,
easy,
Fitz?
I wouldn't have fucking paid such a price.
Fitz, you asked a question about something?
No, if you guys know what BTUs are, the 850,000, was it thongs? What is it?
Thongs, yeah, like the thong song.
Yeah. It correlates with BTUs. That's all I was going to say. I was going to rehash restate my point. Basically,
I love
it's cool that how he does it.
A great metric for measurement of thongs.
Yeah. It's like 850 million thongs.
Yeah. How hot is it?
All right.
Well, is that heat?
Hot.
Is that heat, or is that like a density measurement?
Well, think about if you had one blanket on
or
you,
displacement
and it could get warm. Two, it would get a little warmer. But what if you had 850 million thongs thrown on you? That's gonna be hot as shit.
So your way to measure coverage is to use the smallest coverage item you can think of.
Yeah, but a lot of
covering the least amount of space.
850 million is going to cover a lot, man.
So not a suit of armor, a thong.
Yeah, that's why you got to get into the hundreds of millions, is because they cover such a small area. You need a lot to represent the amount of heat.
It's precise.
So now I'm picturing like a tapestry of thongs.
Yeah, buried underneath
like a quilt.
So many thongs.
It's a lot of work.
You're crushed to crushed to death under thongs.
I was gonna say that's like maybe more work than chainmail. A body of armor made out of thongs. It's just super thick. Flame retardant thongs. I like it. Hey man, merch. Measurement. This is a good merch one. Anybody out there that can weave together thongs and has the time.
I got it. It is Kelvin, like with his hands out, like stretched, where he's pulling the thongs off of girls and then shooting them into a canister.
No, you're thinking image. I want a sweatshirt, hooded sweatshirt made out of thongs.
Oh.
I want thongs to be the actual fabric, but then also the stuffing within.
It could be like it could actually be the thickness of, a certain blanket, or, if you go the distance between t-shirt to sweatshirt, maybe a t-shirt would be, 4 thongs and a sweatshirt would be 10.
No, again,
it would be a measurement of the
thickness. But the whole point is this is the most ridiculous thing to measure in, because it's the smallest piece of fabric I can picture. It's a doily? What's smaller than a thong? It's fucking ridiculous.
That's the point. That's the whole point. It's an accurate. It's a precise form of measurement.
Well, look, all right. So anyone that's in the fashion industry that's listening, if you can't make a sweatshirt, I get it. Maybe a turtleneck or dickie. Maybe gloves.
Or cloak.
A cloak's a tall order. That's a lot of work.
You're talking about a sweatshirt. Sweatshirt's more work than a cloak.
Well, I don't know about that, but fingerless gloves made out of thongs.
Yeah, there you
go. That's dope shit right there, dude. That's all you should wear. You should wear that every day. Just fits your personality.
My personality?
No, Dan's. This old Fitz joke? I'm going to stop.
I've had plenty of times to rehash it. That time it was perfect.
I mean, you took ownership of wearing thongs? Well, I mean...
No, my personality. Fitz personality.
Okay, so you want to be known as someone who wears thongs. It fits your personality.
I thought I could have, a hoodie made or a stocking cap. In that case, yes, I would wear thongs. Or a cloak.
All right, you heard it here first. Fitz is into thongs.
All right, well,
that was it for this chapter. I had a lot of notes on thongs. I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah, I was really hoping to get into the great thong debate.
Throngs of notes of thongs.
I haven't had a good thong debate in a long time, so it's good to get that out of my system. I've been building up.
It builds up, huh?
Yeah.
You gotta release that out.
To debate thongs like at least every 3-4 weeks, and it'd been at least 8.
That's good. You release that pressure. You can let it build back up. That's good.
Yeah, I feel much better. I'll probably bring it up again in the next episode though, because it really went well. So really, it was really strong stuff.
Well, it comes up organically, and for most people, every couple weeks. So, but yeah, I'm ready for chapter 68.
Okay.
I just like to say, really could not have gone better to end that chapter.
All right. Well, then chapter 68 then is called The Ever-Changing Wind. So the following day, Kvothe walks around in his bad mood because he's poor and he's lost his cloak. Kvothe goes to the Aeolian to see Dinah, but instead finds Fela waiting for him. She thanks him for saving her life by giving him a new cloak with lots of pockets. And while Fela pins it around his neck, Kvothe sees Dinah leave the Aeolian. Later, Kvothe starts to head back across the river when he realizes the danger Auri's in from the bone tar in the sewer. He grabs Mola real quick and takes her to the courtyard at Maine's. After frantically searching for her to no avail, Auri returns to the courtyard unscathed. Kvothe plays his lute for her and for Mullah and Auri, and then on the way back to the halls, Kvothe explains to Mullah why he hasn't turned her in so that she doesn't get locked up.
Yeah, so it starts off with his poverty hanging around his neck like a heavy stone, and I mean he's in as bad a situation as he could possibly be in. Like I said, like when he had won his pipes, got some money, then he gets his spot at the whatever, that nice bar, and he's got some money coming in, and then Rothfuss just pulls the rug out from under him and now puts him into a very precarious situation where he doesn't even know how he's going to survive, much less, keep going at the university.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. But, that's what I was saying before, like in the previous chapter, he's shoeless, and we start to realize, like, it becomes more tangible, at least to me, because we're constantly reminded of, when he's struggling, when he gets things back, when, he gets those rewards. Rothfuss is great, man, in terms of balancing the rewarding exploits with, losses, right? We get some good, and then it gets brought right back down. And that's a very realistic way to write a character. That's a very realistic way to keep tension in the story and, to make it more believable to begin with. Because things aren't just all roses, and, it's much more interesting to keep the tension live like that. And we get reminded, but now we get reminded in a way that's much more tangible, where it's like, now he's in a shit mood because of it. And, well, understandably, he doesn't have shoes. He's got one shirt. And how's he going to meet his debts?
Yeah, and especially this is after one of the most heroic events between both books. And that heroic feat, put him in a huge bind. So it's not like he got rewarded for it. He paid a heavy cost for being a hero.
Yeah, especially one of the most notable parts of that is he missed his date with Denna, so he can't find her, and she's got a new patron.
Yeah, I mean, well, and then also, I mean, maybe this is short-sighted, but should somebody buy him a pair of shoes? Like, I mean, if he's the hero that saved this girl's life, and
well, she buys him
I get that,
super
but
expensive cloak. Like
maybe Kilvin,
maybe
there's a reward.
I think Kilvin, padding the stats for him is kind of the way to help Kvothe. If you're going to help him, you can't just you're not going to get Kvothe, just taking charity. It just goes against who he is.
I guess part of that is also, dude, this is the next day. So it's not, sometimes it feels like it's been a week or something, but it's, he's been shoeless for like a day and a half.
Yeah. And it's not like if he goes to Sim and Will, like, hey guys, man, I can't afford shoes. Is there anything you guys can do? They'd be like, yeah, I have multiple pairs of shoes. Have mine. Or I will buy you a pair of shoes, dude. Like, they would have helped him, but his pride is not going to let him go for that kind of help. So part of his situation is his pridefulness, and he's not going to look for help. But the fact that he is like that is also, why he's able to dig himself out of these holes.
Yeah, the nonchalance of him not having shoes to everybody else makes me think that it's not that uncommon in this world for people to be without shoes. I mean, we know Kvothe didn't have shoes while he was running around the streets of Tarbean, but
he was also.
Maybe
I don't think there was any nonchalance though about it. It was, the only two reactions to it were Kilvin being like, "Why the fuck aren't you wearing shoes in here?" and Sim being like, "I couldn't find another pair of shoes. Where are all your shoes?" So it doesn't seem like they were nonchalant about it.
Kilvin was telling a joke, and Sim brushed it off like it was nothing. They just bring it up. They barely mention it.
Are there socks?
Sim didn't want to embarrass him.
I just mean that nobody brought it up. It might not be that strange of a thing to happen in that world. You know what I mean? Those two guys weren't like, "Where are your shoes, Kvothe?" or anybody else for that matter.
Well, they both were like, "Where are your shoes?" They both explicitly said, "Where are your shoes?"
Yeah, they both mentioned
it. They're not going to embarrass him. I think everybody knows Kvothe is fucking broke. I mean, the kid's wearing fucking 2 shirts, so I don't think they want to embarrass him. So they're not going to make a big deal about it and like. Dude, are you going to go fucking buy a pair of shoes, man? What are you doing, you moron?
Well, I was going to say, plus, well, and the only people, and clearly bothers him, so his friends aren't going to make fun of him. The one who does, Ambrose. Ambrose makes fun of him.
Yeah.
For washing his shirt in the river and only having 2 shirts, like, and he's a fucking prick. Other people aren't fucking douchebags because you're broke. You know what I mean?
And not only that, like these are all people that are going to the university that got to pay tuition every year. You're not running into kids that, can't afford shoes that are also going to the university. That's just not, not going to be a thing.
There can't be a lot
rare bird.
I was going to say there's probably not a lot of orphans at the university.
No. And like He's in a class all by himself as far as how destitute he is, it seems. It doesn't seem like that anybody else is like that, other than maybe Auri. And, like when Mola sees Auri, she's like, Jesus Christ, man, look at this girl. Like, it wasn't like, well, she just looks like a girl that doesn't have a lot.
She's like, we need to do something.
Yeah.
Why are we not doing anything? He's like, I'm doing everything I can. Yeah, but we could do more. It's like, no, you haven't thought this out yet.
Yeah, but also, by the time she knows who Auri is, she is definitely going to think that Auri is cracked. I mean, she won't come out if there's not clouds in the sky. Auri's way weirder than Kvothe.
Well, no, but
it's not just weird though. She looks half starved and shit like that.
And it's not like Kvothe denies that. Kvothe says, dude, if you tell anyone, they're gonna put her in the crookery. You know that because she looks freaking nuts.
Mola brings up like, at least like let me give her some clothes. Like so she
won't. But that's when we learn again that she won't take them.
This chapter really solidified what you had said a couple episodes ago about her possibly being royalty. This chapter specifically very much makes her. You see a lot of traits of it: the way she eats, the way she acts, the way she talks, the way that the fact that she won't wear someone else's clothes. It's funny because before it was uttered, I mean, there's details there that once you say it, I'm like, yeah, I get that, but it hadn't occurred to me prior. But that was also before I knew about Bill Bellamy's son being Baron Bellamy. So there's that,
and the synchronicities of it all.
Yeah, exactly.
So if we're going to talk about Mola and Ari's meeting, I got a few things to say about that.
Well, real quick, because I want to get into his meeting with Fella first, because that's there's definitely things to talk about there, because right after obviously we hit this low point, but then he immediately starts peeking out of it and starts skyrocketing back up.
Well,
he gets some money from Kilvin and then goes and buys some boots and then fucking gets hooked the fuck up by Fella.
Well, I also just just a small literary thing. I like how Diok says, as he approaches the Aeolian, your timing is good today. As I approach the Aeolian, we've got someone waiting for you. You immediately think Denna. Yeah. We all think Denna.
Well, why didn't... So knowing what we know now after the few chapters that we read, why didn't Diok tell him that Denna's on the second floor and Fella's waiting for him downstairs?
Well, he may not know that. I mean, who knows?
He may not know Fella was waiting.
Well, no,
he was talking about Denna.
I was actually thinking the opposite. He probably knows Fella's sitting there because Fella's sitting there talking to Stanchion, I believe. And Denna moves in and out, man. She's a fucking... She walks through walls and shit,
but
man.
Diok
She's
knows
like
it.
a fucking... No, I know that, but... Well... Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but it could have been that Denna was already there with someone and shit like that. Like, Fella's there to see him specifically.
It seems like Fella showed up and said, describe Kvothe. Can I find him here? and she's basically waiting for him. So
it's Fella's really hot as shit, and Diak is also like, doesn't think Kvothe should be chasing after Denna, and so, hey, look at that fucking hot ass chick that's here to meet who you just saved from a fire. You should go talk to her.
I'm really surprised that Kvothe didn't run after her.
Well, I love also how Fella does what Denna does, which I love that description. She rushes toward him and then like stops, like she's about to like jump into his arms, and then she stops short, just like Denna, and stop short, and and they and then they just speak and everything. But that introduction's great because you get the energy of like her intention, why she's there, her mood, all in one action.
And their whole interaction was great in the beginning. It was like she was lovely as always, with a heavy purpling bruise darkening one of her high cheekbones. "Oh no," I said, my hand going to my face in sympathetic pain. "Is that from when I dropped you? I'm so sorry." She gave me an incredulous look, then burst out laughing. "You're apologizing for pulling me out of fiery hell?" "Just the part where I passed out and dropped you. It was sheer stupidity. I forgot to hold my breath and suck down some bad air. Were you hurt anywhere else?" "Nowhere I can show you in public," she said with a slight grimace, shifting her hips in a way I found most distracting. "Nothing too bad, I hope." She put on a fierce expression. "Yes, well, I expect you to do a better job next time. A girl gets her life saved. She expects gentler treatment all around."
Dude,
what do you think that move looked like that she did with her hips?
It's very clear. Like the fact that he
thought she did like a humping.
Have you seen like motion. Shakira?
I thought it was more like a humping.
Yeah, humping.
And I think of Fella as like a Spanish, like a girl from Spain, Spanish type girl. So yeah, Shakira, man. Got that Spanish, those hips don't lie.
Now he doesn't go as far as saying he ignored it, but the fact that he says I found most distracting. Well, yeah, we know. Well, but I don't know, man. It's frustrating to read that because it's the biggest sign ever. Like, I mean, she literally says, "Nothing I can show you in public." Like later when we're alone in my room, I'm going to show you everything. And he's just like, "I was distracted by her hips moving in a way that was to seduce me." I don't like when girls spread eagle in front of me.
When she's like, "Nowhere I can show you in public," my reaction would have been like, "Well, we don't have to be in public."
Yes. Immediately go for the clothes.
We can rectify that problem.
Yeah, let's go. Tab. I'll pay the tab. She's got a tab running. Let's settle this up and get the fuck out of here. Yeah.
I got 3 jots. It's going to have to fucking do.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's the biggest sign she gives. And she doesn't go as we read further, if I remember right, she does continue to, put the full court press on him to a degree. But this is the biggest sign I believe she gives him.
Looks like we just lost Fitz. His computer went down. So
good.
Yeah, good riddance.
Cut that dead weight off.
Yeah, well, I mean, he was really pulling us down anyways. He was not offering much this episode.
I love
really garbage. Yeah,
what was that whole introduction? Terrible. I love
so boring. So boring. I fell asleep like 3 times.
Fella, the way he writes Fella here is so good. Like, because she's playful at first, and then it's so good, man. Like she gets seriously Kvothe. I thought that was the worst moment of my whole life. There was fire everywhere, and then she's like looking down, and then she's like holding back tears repeatedly, and then she laughs through them, and then she comes back. I mean, she's very real, very vulnerable and open with him. And I mean, and obviously, I mean, I knew I was going to die. I really knew it, but like I just stood there.
And the aspect of it, like she didn't like being that damsel in distress.
Yeah.
She wanted to be the one who saves herself. She needed Kvothe in that moment.
It makes her very, very likable. to me as a character. Like when she even talks about like, when she was a kid and she would hear these stories about, what does she say? I always hated like those. She equated herself to one of those silly girls in those stories my mother used to read to me. I always hated them. I used to ask, why doesn't she just push the witch out the window? Why doesn't she poison the ogre's food? I love that, like, her whole thing is like, I was a fucking loser. I was going to die and I did nothing about it. And Kvothe is pretty cool with his reaction where it's like, no, you
He lays his hands on top of hers and he's like, these are, what is, he said.
This isn't a maiden's hand.
Yeah. This isn't a maiden's hand. She looked up, what?
He covers it. He covers it really well. But yeah, he's like, man, you got fucking man hands.
Yeah.
That's basically what it was. Yeah, that was pretty great. But
rough HJs.
But but yes, he comes back with a tremendous save. But so this again sort of speaks to something I find interesting when Kvothe, when sex is not on the line, let's say, and he hasn't had sex, so maybe that's too far, but he's much smoother. He lacks the doubt and the half-measuredness that hampers him with Dinah. It kind of reminds me when I was quite young and I first was like steadily dating one particular girl, and I would still go out to the bars with my friends, and it's like, now I got all these girls wanting me. What's the deal? That's because I'm not trying to go after girls. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of, it fits that element to a degree, or at least made me think of it.
Yeah, like when he sees Dinah going out and he wants to go chase her, like I can totally have that feeling. Like I've had moments like that where I had a sure thing, or I was with a girl who definitely wanted to be with me, but then I saw an opportunity to go after the tough one and like pass up a good thing for a shot at a fucking grand slam, and it blows up in your face. He at least had enough sense to deny that impulse, to pull back from it and to stay and not be a dick. And but I've definitely had those moments where like I've done the opposite of what Kvothe does here.
Yeah, but I feel like he's not in that situation. I think he's acting a certain way because he already has his heart set on one girl. He already has his heart set on Dinah. What I'm speaking to is I think that influences the way he acts, because he's not all butterflies in his stomach with Fella. Most dudes would be. Probably why she likes him even more.
Well,
although
it
also saved him.
Goes to he does not think Fella's into him. He's oblivious to it. So when you're oblivious to something, how can how can you be scared of a girl coming onto you if you're oblivious of it?
Yeah, I guess that's It's hard. It's hard also when reading what we just read. Nowhere I can show you in public, and shifting in her hips in a way I found most distracting. To all of us, she's basically like nudging him, like, we can leave now.
Yeah, I don't think Fella would have gone and taken him up to her room and fucking done anything, but I think she would have been like, me and you can start dating.
Yeah,
like,
she's
for
like,
sure.
No. Yeah.
But she doesn't seem the type that he could have just pulled her into her room at that moment. But she's definitely flirting. I think that's clear. And then her flirting becomes much more overt and more obvious later on.
Yeah,
but he's oblivious to it the whole time. Like especially their interaction when they're waiting in line together for their admittance to the university or their fucking their order that they're gonna go
to go
through the thing again. Like she is clearly hitting on him, and like she's like, let's go to dinner, and there's another time where when she helps him find those books for the gram, and she's like,
he looks over and he's like,
let's go to dinner, and he's like, I'll take all three of you to dinner when this is done, and she's like, Jesus Christ, man.
It's funny, man, because he talks about he talks about how her smile dazzled me. And so, I mean, he's not oblivious to how attractive she is, and he still does the right thing. Like, he covers his tracks with the bad, what he said about her hands, and then, turns it into some compliment particular to the subject that they were just talking about. So he's got game there. And then he goes,
he's aware of her. Like, it's even in this chapter. She was close enough that I could feel the warmth of her. And when she leaned to adjust the way the cloak lay across my shoulders, one of her breasts brushed my arm. I stood still as a statue. Over Fella's shoulder, I saw Diak grin from where he leaned in the doorway across the room. So he's aware of Fella, but he's oblivious that she actually wants him.
That moment made me think he's
so scared.
He goes stiff. Oh God!
I think if he knew Fella wanted him, he would be stammering over himself, and he would be scared to talk to her and that kind of stuff. But I think the fact that he's oblivious to that is why he's able to, talk to her and conversate with her and have natural interactions. I think if he had known that she was into him, that would have flustered him, as he's just so inexperienced at this point. But the fact that he's oblivious helped him in that regard, but it prevented him from, even acknowledging that he could, start dating Fella.
Yeah.
But it's clear that he could.
Yeah, she's making it abundantly clear. And he's missing all those signs.
And she fucking gives him another stupid nerdy cloak that is, I think it ends up saving it. Yeah, he says it like saves his life or something like that.
Yeah, when he gets stabbed, right?
Well, when he gets stabbed, it helped him, but then also I think, maybe it didn't save his life, but it came into play when the shipwreck happened, when he was going to meet the Mayor Alvaron in Severin. So he had to cut it up for bandages or something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it came into play on that adventure. He lost it, but it came into play on helping him.
It's a very interesting moment. Well, if you were still going to talk about that, I was just going to say it's a very interesting moment to have him in this scene with her. She's making a huge gesture to show her appreciation. She's also going through a lot of shit emotionally, clearly, and pouring that on him. And then to see Denna, it just completely changes the entire situation. In a minute, or in a millisecond, everything completely changes. To see Denna walking out the door.
Yeah, for sure. And, then the next aspect of it, obviously, is that he goes and he remembers Auri. Yeah. And he remembers that she lives under the underthing, and the bone tar, the fluid from it probably drained down into there, so he kind of fucking panics and goes running down, finds Mola.
Oh, yeah.
Convinces her to go help.
I was going to mention real quick, this was the other part that I was going to say in this group of chapters where suddenly, boom, the pace just immediately quickens. Just like it did in the fishery, suddenly he thinks of Auri and everything just changes. And the entire pace just completely starts to ratchet up. And he goes, gets Mola. He goes, he's running around trying to get everything done to try to help her or make sure she's okay.
And one thing, like, unless I'm misremembering, I'm pretty sure that this is only the second time we meet Auri. And so like Rothfuss did a really good job of making us attached to Auri fairly quickly, because I think that's part of the reason why the pace quickens, is because we give a shit about Auri. We don't want to see this innocent little girl. You know, she's not young, but she's like a little waifish, 20-year-old or so girl that's, cracked, and she's eccentric and, on her own. So we're worried about her. And so when he's panicked, it starts to kind of, oh no, like, God, man, is something bad happened to Auri?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I don't remember if this is just the second time, but that's pretty impressive if it is, because I agree with that the way she was introduced. Yeah, man, she's vulnerable. There's a lot of likable qualities in her. She's also very vexing. You don't really know where to put her in terms of who this character is and what she is, what's going on with her. But yeah, she's very, it's interesting. It's a really interesting aspect. Like, Kvothe doesn't have enough going on already, right? Like, he already doesn't have enough. He's got this girl that he cares for that is in like seclusion, who's just this shadow in the university, who lives underneath or above and is never, is not there, but is there. It's really, it's an interesting, it's a very interesting dynamic to also bring into the story.
Yeah, you get also one of the theories on Auri from this particular chapter, because when she calls out his name and he looks up and he sees Auri, it's like Auri standing there, a silhouette against the night sky, her fine hair made a cloud around her head. A lot of people take that to be like a halo over her head, like an angel. And so that's a partial aspect of why there's debate on, is she an angel? So like the two big angels that people guess that she might be, one was Ardal. Ordal was described as the youngest of them all, who had never seen a thing die, stood bravely before Aleph, her golden hair bright with ribbon. So obviously Auri's got golden hair. So young and golden hair, and that's one of the angels that people think she might be. And then also Gisa, fair Gisa, who had 100 suitors in Bellin before the walls fell, the first woman to know the unasked for touch of man. So people think that Bellin could be where the university is, and that Auri's in the under thing. And Auri, in her story, in the slow regarded silent things, like I mentioned, like there's a description that makes it sound like Auri might have been raped. And so the first woman to know the unasked for touch of man. I think that stuff's reaching.
I was going to say, she's a fallen angel?
Like an angel, but here's the problem with it. The way they describe angels, like the great debate about whether you can see angels all the way back in episode 8. I don't think that just you could easily see her if she was an angel. Maybe like if she's like,
well, that's why I say
Telu reborn as Minda and she's reborn as Auri. So maybe it is Ordal born in human form or Gisa born in human form. Maybe I just don't see any evidence for it. And
if she's an angel, she seems to be off the track, off her track of what she's supposed to be doing. But like you said, if she was raped,
it just doesn't. It doesn't make any sense to me why she would be an angel, and I think the evidence is just, it's so circumstantial, and it doesn't seem like it would be necessary to the story. Whereas I think that the theory that she could be Princess Ariel is much stronger and would make much more sense, and you could put it together with, that's, maybe she gets behind the 4-plate door, he has to go behind the 4-plate door to save her, shit starts to unravel from there, that eventually leads to him opening the lackless door, and you could see a train of events spiraling out from her being Princess Ariel. I just don't see anything just off of her being an angel.
She is really interesting. I mean, the fact that we don't actually know her name is really interesting in itself. There's a little bit of a loading in her. You know what I mean? Like her sleepless mind seems to be running the show. Or her sleeping mind, whatever, seems to be running the show. So we get a lot.
She seems to be a shaper. I mean, seems to have power. She's a former student, but she's discovered knowledge that Mandrake didn't have. She seems to be able to do things that are not normal at all. She seems to be powerful. I think there's a reason her mind cracked. I don't think it was just she was raped and she's just kind of broken inside. It seems to be more than that. It seems to be something much more substantial than, obviously being raped would be substantial, but I'm talking about just in the nature of this world for what being cracked means. I think it's more substantial than that.
Well, I would say from what Rothfuss has built in, with the example that we get that's clear is the guy that was Elodin's Giller. Yeah. That leads us to believe that she has probably a capability to do things that are tremendous. And what she did that was tremendous would have then cracked her. And the fact that she's so young would mean that she's, again, that leads us to believe that then she would be she has tremendous capability on a level.
Yeah, and the fact that Elodin takes an interest in her, and when she sees Elodin looking at the name of the wind, she sees him looking at the name of the wind. Like she doesn't just see him as just staring out into the void like a weirdo. Like she sees what he was doing. So there's clearly more to her than just a broken girl that got raped and now I've gone crazy. It's more than that.
I mean, you're right. What you were saying in the beginning is we get a lot about their relationship here. And if this is the second time, then it's very effective with what lives in the salt in Kvothe's mind: trace minerals, chromium, basalt, malleum, iodine, everything your body needs but probably can't get from apples and bread and whatever you manage to scrounge up when I can't find you. Which this leads, I mean, that in itself is he's caring for her. Basically, it makes us feel like he's keeping her alive.
Yeah, it shows the difference between her gifts to Kvothe versus his to her. He's more just practical, playing word games, and it's like a poetry behind a gift.
But that's
like
interesting.
Having to come up with some music behind the gift. But hers, there's something different. Like that coin, she's like, I brought you a feather with the spring wind in it, but since you're late, she looked at me gravely. You get a coin instead. And she said, it will keep you safe at night as much as anything can. That is, it was shaped like a Turin penance piece, but it gleamed silver in the moonlight. I'd never seen a coin like it. There's something different about her gifts versus what he gives her.
Well, what's interesting, though, is even him playing, let's say he's just playing a word game with her. He has to do it. And it makes me think of when he's with the Adem, because he plays their game, but then he does it well. And when he does it well, he discovers spinning leaf. And he discovers a way to waken his sleeping mind. And then how he can have control over the name of the wind. So it's taking him down the path that Elodin was trying to take him down with the Adem. But I feel like that's part of what's happening here too as well. And I think if I'm going to start to... that makes me realize that I should start to read into much more deeply what he is actually saying and how he evolves in his discussions with Auri, because it wouldn't surprise me if you can make some connections to how he evolves through their conversations to actually be going down that route of naming.
Yeah, I mean, because it seems like that's what she's doing, some form of naming, shaping. That's obviously how her mind's working. And he's playing the game, so his mind is like almost subconsciously learning these things and getting more attuned to these things, but he's not doing it intentionally, where she is.
It's such a great way for Rothfuss to subtly revealed to us. I mean, he's kind of doing to us what Elodin's trying to do for Kvothe by using Auri, because we look at Auri as this little wayfish broken girl, so we take everything she says with massive, grain of salt. So we're not really 100% believing, but on further read-throughs, we start to realize there is more to her. And that's what we're talking about now. But then we start to to deliver to us another piece of the sleeping mind, or naming through the subtlety of a character like her, is a really, really interesting way to do it, because it plays on the subject in itself. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you also get that you get that she's not defenseless in this chapter, that she's not, completely crazy. She's got her wits about her. Like their interaction. Yeah. There was a big fire. A lot of it went down the grates. Did you see it? Holy God, yes. She said, her eyes wide. It was all over, and all the shrews and raccoons were running everywhere trying to get out. Did any of it get on you? I asked. Did you get burned? She shook her head, grinning a child's sly smile. Oh no, it couldn't catch me. Were you close to the fire? I asked. Did you breathe any of the smoke? Why would I breathe smoke? Ari looked at me as if I were simple. The whole under thing smells like cat piss now. But I love that her just like, what? Why would I do that? That's stupid. After he did that.
Yeah. That's pretty great.
That's exactly what he did. And he was like, what a stupid mistake. And she's just like, why would I do that? That is so stupid.
It's very revealing that because you feel like he feels like she's not in control, and she's at the whim of, with her smoke down there, she's going to be fucked. It's like, I know what I'm doing. If I see smoke, I run. And am I going to breathe it? No. What am I, an idiot?
The fact that she was able to, she was easily able to protect herself, and then just the idea of like even just breathing in smoke was just like so stupid to her. It gave you the impression that she could take care of her fucking self.
Yeah.
Kvothe's like helping her out and shit, but she's obviously been taking care of herself before he got there, and she could do it, without him.
I mean, again, there's little subtleties, but even like with when she says, "Hello, Mola, would you like an apple?" and then she just trots off, like she just leaves, but comes back with an apple. Like, this is her terrain, you know what I mean? Like she takes care of this area. I don't know. It's a little thing, but she has this independence. She owns this area. She's named all these places. There's Bellows. There's Underthing. There's all these. She owns this area basically in her own. It's her own little world.
Yeah, she's fucking great. I love her character. She's funny in it, and her quirkiness is funny. She's strong and vulnerable. She's complex, and so she's a really interesting character.
And so there's a couple pieces here that speak to what you've been saying about her possibly being royalty. Is Auri nodded, satisfied, sat down, spreading out the small cloth and arranging her food with the same care as always. I watched her as she began to eat, dipping a green bean into the salt before taking a bite. But then also, after she eats her meal, it's like, now play. I mean, now that it's in my mind that she's like royalty, that feels like, something that someone of royalty would do. They just, now it's time.
Yeah, entertain me.
Yeah,
snap to
exactly.
Yeah,
it's pretty great.
I think that the case for her being Princess Ariel is very strong. Just especially because it just seems weird that he's going to bring in a princess that hasn't been brought in the first two books, that he's going to have to build up, that we're going to have to give a shit about, and it just seems like it would take more space than he has available to finish the story. It seems like that most of these characters of importance in the third book have to have already been introduced in these first two books. Doesn't seem like he's got a lot of room to be bringing in a bunch of new characters that we haven't heard about before.
No, you're right. I mean, when I start to think about these arcs and how he's going to have to tie it all in and then kind of not necessarily wrap it up, because hopefully we'll keep going, but I feel like the book's going to be as long as book 2.
Yeah, and according to him, it's going to be shorter. So that really makes me believe that we've met most of the characters. That there's not going to be a lot, or we've at least heard about them. Even if we haven't met them, we've heard about them in the world. And like we've heard the name Princess Ariel, but we haven't heard her mentioned in the world. Like, you know, we've heard King Roderick mentioned a few times. So, like, it's not going to surprise me that he's going to meet King Roderick. I think that's fucking baked into the cake. But, like, Princess Ariel is she's just her name's been mentioned. Like, there's no whispers of, there's this Princess Ariel off in blah, blah, blah. And, like, so there's been no foreshadowing of her in the world in the midst of his story. It's only been out, you know, when he's in the bar outside of his story that he's brought her up. So it'd be, because even with Florian, we don't meet her to the second book, but he mentions Florian constantly, you know, a number of times before we meet her. So the fact that he hasn't been bringing up Ariel through 2 books other than one line leads me to believe that she is someone we've already met. And Auri is, you know, the clearest case for that.
But and it also speaks to, you know, his subtlety, because he's definitely not hitting us over the head with it. I didn't pick it up until you had mentioned it, but now I see the connections subtle, quite clearly. But I think she's a poet as well. When she describes, I mean, part of that is just the way she describes everything, but particularly when she tries to get Mola to stay, she has to hear him play. Oh, you mustn't go. His voice is like a thunderstorm, and his hands know every secret hidden beneath the cool, dark earth. Or also, maybe she can see what we've talked about before, which is his abilities in music is not just playing beautiful music. He's controlling things. It's like you said, it's like a sort of naming.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's shaping, but yeah, I think she's a shaper, but I think also probably a namer. But yeah, it's definitely interesting. And then, you know, we get Mola asking, like, you know, why haven't you told anybody? You know, someone would do something, and Kvothe's like, come on, be fucking real. They're gonna fucking throw her in the fucking the insane asylum and lock her away, and you know full well that's what they're gonna do. And then you get another hint of who she is when she's like, I shook my head, it won't work. I brought her a secondhand dress a couple span ago. She says wearing someone else's clothes is filthy. Mola looked puzzled. She didn't look sealedish, not even a little. Maybe she was just raised that way. Do you feel any better? Yes, I lied. But so the fact that Mola is puzzled and takes note of the fact that she won't wear secondhand clothes, I think that is also a huge indication that she is of nobility, of a higher station, that she's not, you know, obviously it seems like it's a sealedish, you know, part of their culture is they don't wear other people's clothes. But I think she's obviously, she's not sealedish, but I think it's part of how she was raised as a princess, as a upper echelon society person that would not even need to wear secondhand clothes. Like, she's always wore firsthand clothes, and it was probably bred into her that wearing other people's clothes was gross. It was beneath her.
Or like it wouldn't even be a thing that I could see it also if it was never even a possibility or a need, then she would just it would seem kind of gross. Like, why the fuck would I wear someone else's clothes?
Yeah, she describes it as filthy. She looks down her nose at it, and she's living in the, you know, basically the sewers.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, she's definitely got.
That leads me to believe, you know, I think that's strong evidence that it's a nobility thing.
Well, but it's also interesting because when you do read her book specifically, or the Slow Regard of Silent Things, that is her world down there. She rules that world, and she bestows power and significance on anything she finds. You know what I mean? It's not like it's interesting. Yeah, you see her, she's a homeless wreck is what she basically looks like. She didn't see herself like that at all. She's the queen of her world in the world that is hers, which is she's living in a place no one else lives. I mean, she is basically a homeless person with pretty extravagant, really nice place for you to be underneath this place, where there's certain places that have warmth. You know, there's some comfort that's provided just by that world that exists down there. But I mean, in her mind, she's the queen of that world. You know, it's very interesting. And like I was just saying, she also, anything she finds, she bestows upon it and entitles it to something of great significance, even if it's just a gear that she found, or a key, or whatever it is.
Yeah, she sees, it's described in a way that she sees the shape of the world, where things should be, what their proper place is, and she sees the world through different eyes than a normal person.
That reminds me from that book. I've only read it the one time. It was a long time ago, but she will place things that she finds, and then she'll look at it for a while and realize that it doesn't work there, and then she'll barely move it, and then realize, oh, that's where it's supposed to be. Like, it finds its place.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's really interesting character. I've never read, I don't think I've ever read in anything I've ever read that a character quite like Auri.
No, I'm not. I can't think of anyone else that I would compare to her, because I mean, she's strong, brave, vulnerable, complex. In a terrible situation, but making the best situation out of it.
Well, it's really interesting to have someone who's physically weak but mentally headstrong. And have great self-confidence.
At the same time broken.
And also, it's really, to have that self-confidence. Well, then that's like Kvothe in a way, right? They're both have supreme self-confidence, but then at the same time, they're also broken.
Yeah.
So they fit together.
They go good together. It's very natural that Kvothe would be drawn to her, that he would care a lot for her, because she does share some similarities with him. And Alodin being drawn to her makes sense as well. It all fits together well, but she's an extremely complex character that is extremely interesting. Very curious what's in store for her in book 3. I don't think it's a lot of good. And also, we know at the end of the Slow Regarded Silent Thing, she discusses the gift that she comes up with. The whole story is about the gift she's trying to come up for Kvothe, and it ends up being a bed in her under thing, and she thinks there's gonna come a time where he's gonna need a place to hide, and he's gonna need a new name, and just like he gave me a new name, I'll give him a new name. So that makes me think that she's going to play some kind of role in the transition from Kvothe to Kvothe.
I wonder if in her backstory, Alodin knows, is familiar with her in terms of what she was capable of, and when he says, "Wait, did Fella change her name? Wait, did you? You don't change her name." I wonder if Auri changed her name, and that's why she's kind of suppressed, or in this locked-in state, because we see what happened.
I think she's cracked. I think she's his student. I don't. It seems like she still has access to her powers and stuff like that. But what it does make me think, the fact that it seems like she's a shaper, I think this is probably the best guess on one of the, not the best guess, one of the best guesses on why Kvothe can't use his powers. Maybe she uses her ability as a shaper to change him, to fundamentally change him, so that he can't do whatever he does to fuck shit up again. She does something to fundamentally change him so that he can't ever do it again.
That was very humble of you to say that. And instead of being the best, it might be one of the best. Very humble.
Well, because I have other guesses too. So.
Yeah, but I mean, you're just showing that
all
humility.
my guesses are really good. I hate to put one of my babies over another.
Jesus Christ. Then you just wiped away the humility. It's gone.
No, I'm very humble about it, though. I'm very, very humble about it. More humble than you could possibly be.
I gotta read the Slow Regard of Silent Things again, because I'm missing out, because when you mentioned that a bed and he's gonna change his name, that's so much more meaningful to me now than what it would have been years ago when I read it. Because I hadn't made so many of these connections. I mean, I'd only read the other two books once, so I hadn't, I hadn't been making these connections. Yeah, I need to go back through it. But yeah, that's very interesting, man. And yeah, I mean, speaking of his style, it makes sense that he would assign great importance to a character like this. I mean, it's just it's so interesting to do it to someone who, if someone read these books one time, hadn't thought about him again until they pick up the third book, they remember Auri. They know who she is. They probably in their mind don't assign great importance to her because she's in the background, right? I mean, she's literally physically either on the rooftops or underneath things. She's not live in the moment, in the big moments that Kvothe goes through, but she's there and she's capable of something. You can feel it. So it's really interesting to have big things come out of her or be connected to her. That would be a very interesting move for Rothfuss to make. So yeah, I think we're definitely onto something there. If she didn't make a single appearance in book 3, I'd be freaking shocked.
Yeah, it'd be super weird.
It'd be.
She's like Savoy in book 2, where Savoy just disappears.
Well, I mean,
in book 2,
but like
she just disappears in book 3. No more mention of her.
Well, it's kind of like with Puppet. I mean, he's mentioned quite a few times. He has a tremendous appearance, and that's it. Then he's just he's not legend because he exists. I mean, he's there, but his influence is felt. And then there's a tremendous, I don't know if it's a full chapter with him, but his presence when he's physically there is amazing. And that's all we get.
Yeah, so, I think he will definitely. I would be shocked if he doesn't play a part in book 3. Auri is definitely going to play a part in book 3.
It seems like she has to, yeah.
I think the best guess is that she's going to play a part in the transition from Kvothe to Kvothe. That her ability to know, like she knew Kvothe was coming to see her in this situation. And she was just like, "You're late." But Kvothe did not know he was going to see her.
Yeah. Well,
and
it's
and then when she's like in the underthing in her own book, she's like, "He's coming in such and such days." It's not like Kvothe is like, "I'm coming in,"
it's not
these amount of days. She just knows it. And then she's like, "Oh shit, he's not coming tomorrow. He's coming today." Or he's not coming in 2 days. He's coming tomorrow, whatever it was.
So maybe,
she knows these things. And so she when she says she knows that there's going to be a time that he's going to need a place to hide. I think that's what I think that could be likely what happens is when the person he kills, that the guy's like, the stone is shattered, the cobblestones is shattered. It can't be mended. I think after that moment, he might go hide under the underthing to get away from it. And then he's like, I did this terrible thing. There's something wrong with me. And she's like, I'll give you a new name. And she changes who he is.
This is what I think. I think he goes down there. He brings Will and Sim, and she creates the boy band for the three of them. And then the boys are back in town, as you said. And then that eventually evolves into the wrestling campaign.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly how it goes. They create a boy band. They're going, good times are going. Then, they kind of fizzle out. Their second album doesn't sell so well, so he becomes a bar owner, develops a drinking problem, decides to use his ADM skills to become a wrestler, to try to, become like a guy that can, he signs up for some event to be a wrestler to win some money, and then he just becomes this fat, fucking drunk wrestler.
We see it in one of the interlude chapters with the two soldiers where he does fairly well, but not well enough to, beat these guys up. That speaks of a guy that's going to do professional wrestling.
Staged.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So he can do the moves, just not well enough to, actually win these bouts where, your ass is on the line. So choreographed.
All coming into place. The boy band to the drunk bar owner to the movie like The Wrestler with Mickey Rourke.
And, solid. I never saw that, but
it's basically the story of Kvothe.
I don't want some awards when it
you really, like if you just think of like how things are going, like, yeah, that's it. That's the movie.
Interesting. Okay. I didn't think that from what I had seen back in the day, the little trailers and whatnot.
Marissa Tomei is basically like Denna. She's a stripper and, like, Kvothe, Mickey Rourke is hung up on her. And
I think I could see Mickey Rourke wearing a cloak. I think I've seen him in a trench coat, And that's not a duster is not far away from a cloak.
Mickey Rourke Mickey Rourke has worn fingerless gloves in his lifetime.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yes, probably in that movie.
For sure, yeah.
He might be wearing them right now. I wouldn't doubt it. I would not doubt it.
He's gonna be so mad when he listens to this.
You know what's gonna happen? He's gonna look down at his hand with fingerless glove. And he's going to be like, these motherfuckers.
Or I liked when you were making fun of nerds. I really appreciate it. But now you're making fun of me.
Or maybe he looks down at his hand and he goes, goddamn right. You're damn right. I'm fucking rocking these fingerless gloves.
Yeah, he definitely owns it. Yeah, it's more Mickey Rourke style. He would own it.
Yeah. Well,
and since he's going to be like he's clearly our number one fan. And so he's just going to be sending us messages like with pictures of him wearing his fingerless gloves like, what's up?
Another good merch item. Mickey Rourke is our number one fan. And just have a big picture of him and thumbs up.
We'll just Photoshop us in pictures with Mickey Rourke.
I love you guys. You guys are the best.
He's a huge fan. Huge fan.
It all makes sense. Rourke. It all makes total sense.
Yeah, why wouldn't he be? I would be a huge fan, so why wouldn't he?
Yeah, that's a strong connection.
Yeah, it pretty much wraps it up for that. I think, might as well, with where we're at in the episode, we could just wrap up the episode, and then Fitz will be back in, and we'll just start on 69 when Fitz jumps back in.
69.
Yeah, so we'll start off with 69, which gets Tim really excited.
It's not a typical starting point. That's usually like at least. That's like
very mature kid.
Step 3 or 4, maybe.
So what do we got next episode? We got. Oh, he's gonna go and have his conversation with Diak, and then he's gonna get attacked by the bandits. And then,
that's a big one.
And then he's going to hear about the fire at the Mothin farm, the attack by the Chandrian. He's going to get his horse. I think that's probably as far as we'll get. We'll get him getting on the horse and heading that way.
This shit jumps off quick, man. Like, there's not a lot of chapters that let up.
Yeah, we're galloping towards the end here. Like the latter half here. Like there's some really long chapters, so coming up that it'll make it hard to get through a bunch of chapters all at once, but we're probably gonna fly through the end of this book in another 4 or 5 episodes, 6 episodes maybe, we'll probably have this book knocked out and then move on to book 2.
Well, especially if Fitz has, further technical problems. I mean, we really, really move quick. We coast very, very smoothly.
It felt so good for him to drop off. Like, it just...
It's like a lake. It's like a lake with no wakes. So it's like the wakes are gone. And we just get to...
so
it's like the water's just glass,
And the best part is him, like, I could feel him talking to me, like he's still listening on Skype. I feels like he's saying words to me that I can hear, but because his computer's down, they're not on the episode, so it's as if he never said them. So when he's like trying to correct the record, it feels good that the audience doesn't get to hear him trying to correct the record on this.
Yeah, that does add an extra layer of icing on the cake for sure. It kind of makes the cake itself,
It's really good. Like, I mean, for the audience, he is not happy with our interpretation of his dismissal, but
yeah, he keeps chiming in.
He can't defend himself, so hey, that's what happens. Fucking get a better power grid around your house. Your power doesn't go out, and then you can defend yourself, and people can hear what you have to say.
Yeah, man. Why don't you Nikola Tesla the exterior of your perimeter and stop being a fucking Thomas Edison lame ass?
But yeah, so. That'll probably do it. I guess
that'll do her.
Fitz distracting us. It really, like, as soon as Fitz started talking again, it really distracted us.
Well, which is good.
So when end where now we just ended on a fucking terrible note.
Yeah. So when he's on the episode, he drags it down, and when he's not on the episode, he chimes in to drag it down as well.
Yeah, he's
very, very
fucking.
Very poignant.
He threw me off, and he lowered the quality of the episode even when he's not on it. Jesus, dude.
We'll probably have to redub. We'll just redub the end of the episode just so we can have it, sans
maybe
Fitz.
We can find a way to just eliminate his entire episode just as punishment. Like, maybe we can just fit it in. Like, that would be impressive if we could just eliminate someone from an episode without the audience even knowing.
It would be... That would really, I mean, if it were me, that would make me feel pretty inconsequential. I mean, I don't know how I'd go on with my life after that, really, to me.
But, all right, folks, that'll... Fitz. It'd be like, what are you guys laughing at? Laughing at Fitz crying like a little baby boy, because he can't fucking talk. But all right, folks, that'll do it for this episode. We'll see you next week.
Yep. Peace out.